This is not a message for everyone. This is a transmission for the starseeds, for those of you who know or suspect that you are something different, something unusual, not of this place. These are the messages for you that I, as the host of the MaxAnte, are bringing to you. Don't expect anything here to make a lot of sense. Everything is entirely paradoxical and is for you to interpret and for you to discern what is true.
Making freedom your true north. Okay, what does this mean? It means priorities. Have a look at your priorities. So you really need to get real about your situation. Now, if freedom isn't your priority, I'd ask you why. Why isn't freedom your priority? Imagine for a moment that you were a slave. Yeah, like a real slave. Like imagine like a couple of hundred years ago, there you were, you've been captured from your home, from your people, taken away in chains and subjected to harsh treatment, to being whipped, kicked, pushed around, beaten up, all such atrocities, and forced into hard labor, okay? Pretty extreme, very extreme. It happened to millions and millions of people, for sure. And so, now, ask them, ask that person, what's their priority? Freedom. Absolutely. Freedom is their priority. Because everything was so harsh, so diabolical, so horrible, that that's what they dreamed of. All they wanted was freedom. Now, fast forward to today. Yes, you are not receiving such harsh treatment. Well, I certainly hope not. Are some people? Yes, they are. Like literally, millions of people are living the life I just described. And that is very sad. And what are we doing about it? Because they are us, we are them. We're all one thing here. Like humanity sharing this whole situation. Completely just unacceptable that people are experiencing lives like that. Anyway, thankfully, I'm so grateful I am not experiencing that, and I'm grateful that you are not experiencing that. However, are you a slave? We'll have a look at it. Are you able to do whatever you want, for as long as you want, wherever you want, with whomever you want? I don't think so. You probably can't, can you? If you can't do whatever you want to do, whenever you want to do it, wherever you want to do it in the world, and with whomever you want to do it, I would say that you are kind of a bit like a slave. That means you are in a situation where you have limited options. You are kind of, in a way, forced to take certain steps every day, maybe even if you don't want to. How has this happened? Because of the financial model that you've bought into, quite literally. I bet you that you and many people have got debts. They bought into a situation of debts. How did they get these debts? Maybe they went to some crazy university from the US and you got this crazy debt because you believed that getting the degree was going to actually make your life better. Well, what do you want? Do you want to fit in with the social structure, which is all about entrapment? See, the more you buy into the social structure, the more entrapped you become. That's all it is. It's the opposite of freedom. The current human realm, the human society, is about entrapment. Becoming part of a cog in the machine, like literally. And you're part of the mechanism, the mechanical system, which is, there's no freedom in that. There's certainly no freedom in thought, no critical thinking, no freedom in bodily movement. You can't just up and leave. If you don't like your job and you just, let's say it's a beautiful day outside and you go, well, I just want to go and be in the park. Let's say there's 3 beautiful days. Let's say it's just been raining nonstop and now it's sunny and beautiful. And you say, I'm just going to get up and go to the park. I just want to hang out with the trees. That's where I am right now. I'm in this beautiful park. It's my 10 a.m. in the morning. I just do whatever I like. Like I'm talking to you now. I love doing this. I love sharing this material with you. I make sure every day happens exactly how I like it. And I decided to live categorically, unrestrictively like that, without compromising. No compromising. I would literally start living like this. I first heard about these concepts of living this sort of life 20 years ago, in the late 90s. in the late 90s, that's when I had this like wow moment. People told me that you could actually have that much freedom. By then, I'd already got myself into a pickle. Absolutely, I was already married, which is one of the biggest restrictive factors ever possibly invented. And I had a child for further restriction, and I had debts, more restrictions. I had taxes to pay, more restrictions. I think I even had maybe some staff to pay. I was moving between being a contractor and having a business, and you name it, I had the whole works. So because I got myself into a corner, I'd backed myself against the wall. That was probably why freedom became such a priority for me. See, only once we've actually lost our freedom fully do we realize how much of a priority it is. See, if you're in some sort of tepid situation, if everything is just kind of like, lukewarm, it's not that bad, but it sure ain't that good, then you're probably not feeling very motivated to actually really break free, to transform your life into something truly magical, something that you would just love to jump out of bed every day. So like I was saying before, like if you just wanted to go and hang out in the park, like for 3 days, what if there's a beach that you love, or a forest that you love, or a town that you love, it's a country, and you just want to go there? Can you do it? Can you just like up and go? Like I'm living in Mexico at the moment, and so there's a friend coming down to visit, going to this beautiful town called Oaxaca, which has the most divinely delicious food, and all this cacao and amazing chocolates and just so much yumminess. And she's going down there with her daughter, and I'm living in Mexico City at the moment, and my girlfriend, she suggested to me, hey, well, why don't we just go to Oaxaca and go visit? She's going to visit for 10 days. Do you want to just go there for a couple of days? And I'm like, no, let's go for the whole 10 days. Let's just go there and I can still keep doing my work. Like, that's the thing. Like, I am very passionate about the kind of work that I do. And I've always been like that. Since my early 20s, when I realized that there was a digital revolution happening in the world, I could see straight away that it was going to be possible. This is in the early 90s, before the internet. I could see that the internet was going to happen because I've been, obsessed with sci-fi all of my youth, and cyberpunks and all this kind of stuff. I knew what was coming, and I could see that by the possibility of having a laptop, and that I was going to be able to work from any location in the world. And I imagined that in my early 20s, in the early 90s, and lo and behold, within a few years, it was happening. Like, it was reality in the world, And so, however, I'd got hoodwinked by society, by being involved in that Goenka cult where they told me the priority was to get married and have children. I bought into the whole social dogma of, putting other people first, basically locking myself down and taking care of other people, like people who weren't even in my life. Like finding a woman, in my case, and bringing her into my life and then taking care of her and then making a whole new person. This is in my early 20s doing all of this, before I'd even thought about life, before I'd heard about critical thinking before. And unfortunately, well, I don't know, it was just peculiar that I didn't even know anybody who thought like this. My parents, my family members, all these people who were like decades older than me. I'm talking about they were in their 30s, 40s, 50s. They weren't asking me these questions. They weren't telling me about freedom. Interestingly, I did actually meet 2 people just before I got married. I kind of let it slip. I was doing a workshop, a course in learning about vegetarian cooking, macrobiotics actually. I was very fascinated by energetics of cooking and how to bring the balance into harmony of cooking. That's a priority. I think it's really good to learn about high quality nutritional cooking, whether it was raw or whatever, vegetarian. All of these things are important to me, and I think important to everybody once you start really researching that. Anyway, the teacher of the course, she heard I was getting married, and she was like 50 plus or whatever, and she just laughed, and she said, "Why on earth are you doing that?" Like, I knew that she had some kids and stuff, and she just laughed. And that was all she said. She basically said to me, "Why are you doing that?" She was shocked and horrified. And I didn't follow it up because I was stupid, profoundly stupid. I was so deeply embedded in the matrix. I was believing society. I was believing what everybody was telling me. I'd bought into the whole system, into that spiritual cult I was part of, where they were telling me how to be a goody two-shoes, how to be a good person in the world. And then I was at university, and I was looking at all the people there, and looking at my family, and everybody had jobs. Everybody was like settled down. I just thought that was kind of normal. I believed that it was good, and I didn't understand because nobody I was talking to told me what real freedom was, what it would mean to have an unrestricted life. Because guess what? Nobody had it. I didn't know anybody that had it, and because nobody that I knew had it, nobody that any of them knew had it either. And so it was like the blind leading the blind. Nobody knew what freedom was because nobody had it, and so nobody could tell me about it. Wow. Okay. So, but then, like 8 years later or whatever, it's like 1999, and I start meeting some very curious people, and they start telling me, hey dude, you don't have to put up with all this. Guess what? You can be free in the world. I'm like, what are you talking about? They're like, no, really. You can actually become free in the world. It's going to take a revolution in your finances, in your way of thinking, in your personal empowerment. I was blown away. These were the first people I'd ever met who told me that such things were possible, and they weren't. I mean, I think maybe some of them were living like that, but I wasn't really sure. But anyway, the germ of the idea, the germ of the seed, was planted, and it took hold, and I realized that it was real because I started researching, and I could see that it was actually possible, that I even had the power at my fingertips, because I knew how to use computers, I knew how to speak English, and I knew that the world was changing. I could see that there was a paradigm shift happening in the world, where basically there was going to be a revolution in technology and in finances. And so I pivoted myself. However, because of the restrictive situation I got myself into, with all these debts and family life and a small child that I wasn't willing to walk out on at all, that I was a responsible person. And see, that was the thing. I was able to take full responsibility for the decisions that I'd made, and because everything has consequences. You see, consequences are real. So in this world, you can actually do whatever you want, but there are consequences. Always consequences. And I recognized that I had made some of the biggest decisions possible without thinking them through, without any thought. And so I'd got myself into the most restrictive situation, and here I was finding out that there was an alternative, like a whole new world that was actually available in this world, and it was going to take me more than like a dozen years to actually move everything in that direction. Maybe because I'm a slow learner. I don't know. But because I had difficulties, I was in a very difficult marriage, and I was sort of... See, and that was the other crazy thing. The more I struggled, the more I actually tried to break free, the more tricky it became. That's what was so weird. And I didn't know anybody who was really living the lifestyle that I wanted. This unrestricted lifestyle where I could go anywhere that I wanted for as long as I wanted, doing whatever I wanted with whomever I wanted, all that stuff. But I started reading books about this, and there were people. And then Tim Ferriss brought out that awesome book, The 4-Hour Workweek. Great book, great concept. And so these things were all compounding for me, and I was going to workshop after workshop. I was studying with Anthony Robbins and T. Harv Eker and all these people. And so freedom was becoming crystallized in my mind as a reality that was like a puzzle. That while I didn't know many people or even anybody that were doing it, clearly it was possible, but it wasn't straightforward and easy. And here I was, I even knew the real potential. I didn't just want freedom in the way that everybody else, that these people were talking about it. I wanted complete freedom in every respect. I began to realize that all the restrictive social modalities, the the nature of interacting with people, all of that was a restriction. There was no freedom in that. And then, so there were just onion layers of restrictiveness and how everybody was performing, how they were all behaving. And then, of course, there was even the biggest level of all, there was the spiritual freedom that the Buddha spoke of. You see, he said, I should have known from the get-go, because I started studying Buddhism and what the Buddha was talking about when I was 20, when I first got involved with the Vipassana. And so I could only imagine that for the Buddha, freedom, or Siddhartha Gautama, before he became the Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, the prince, he realized the importance of freedom, and he was already rich. So can you imagine? His story is very interesting. He had it all. He was this super wealthy prince who lived in this palace, waited on hand and foot, had all of his concubines, could sleep with all these beautiful women, had the most gorgeous wife, had people just bringing him whatever he wanted, and so he had all this freedom, but he was restrained and restricted by living in the palace, because they didn't want him, the king didn't want his son to go out of the palace and be confronted by the reality of the world. There was a prophecy that said that if Prince Siddhartha left the palace, that he would see the reality of the situation of the world, and then he would want to go off and become a mystic. He would want to go off and become a sadhu, like a holy person, and he would want to break free, and that he wouldn't want to become the next king, the next ruler of the land, which is what his father wanted his son to be. But one day, Prince Siddhartha got out of the palace, and that was where he saw the 4 shocking sights. He saw somebody who was old. He'd never seen anybody. They'd kept all the old people away from him. He was shocked. He said to his attendant, he said, "Who's this person?" And they said, "Oh, Prince Siddhartha, this is an old person." He said, "What is an old person? What does old mean?" He said, "Oh, well, people get older, they get run down, they get all wrinkly, their bodies don't work as well, they can't do as much stuff." Siddhartha said, "I don't know what you're talking about. I've never seen anybody old before." And they said, "Well, sir, I'm sorry to tell you, but this is the human condition. This is what happens to people. They get old, they start to decay a bit, they don't work as well." Oh my God, the Buddha, he wasn't the Buddha yet. Siddhartha was just shocked to hear this. So then he went a bit further, and just lo and behold, on that same trip while he was out of the palace, he saw somebody lying down and they had like some problem, like bleeding or some such, and they were coughing. And he said, "Hang on," to his attendant. He said, "Hang on, what's going on here? What's happened to this person?" And they said, "Oh, sir, I'm sorry, this person's very sick. They're injured and they're bleeding. They've got some illness. This illness is affecting them." And he said, "What do you mean an illness? I've only ever seen perfect people. Everybody in the palace is super healthy." And his attendant said, Yes, I'm sorry, my lord. The king has done a good job of keeping everybody who's old and sick out of the palace, so that you never even imagined that such things were possible." Remember, Prince Siddhartha at this point, he's like 29 years old. And so he shakes his head and he realizes, wow, so this body I'm in, it's quite delicate. This body is very temporary. It's going to get old. It's going to get decay. It can even get sick and injured. This is a predicament that I'm in. All these thoughts are rushing through Siddhartha's head as he keeps on walking. And then, lo and behold, he comes across this person lying down, this third encounter, and they're not even moving. And as he gets closer, they've got this stench. And then he realizes that they're not even breathing. And he says to his attendant, "Excuse me, tell me, what is this?" And he said, my lord, Prince Siddhartha, I'm sorry, but this is a dead person." Siddhartha says, "What do you mean, dead?" He says, "Well, sir, not only do people get old, not only do they decay, not only can they get sick and broken and injured, but eventually everybody dies, sir. They actually die." He says, "What do you mean they die?" He says, "Well, they stop being. They stop breathing. They're gone." And this is like blowing Siddhartha's mind. He's like, "What the fuck are you talking about? Not only so you're telling me that I'm going to get old? You're telling me that I'm going to get sick? That I could get injured? And that after all of that, I'm going to end up dead? Not here?" "Yes, sir. I'm sorry to tell you, that's going to happen to you. It's going to happen to me. It's going to happen to everybody." Siddhartha was just shocked. He didn't know what to do with himself. He was like horrified that all of this had been hidden from him, that the full weight of reality of the human situation was crashing down upon him at 29 years old, after the most perfectly, deliciously, delightful, fun life that you could even imagine, living in a penthouse, being this playboy, doing whatever he wanted, all of it hitting him, coming home, realizing that this very unsatisfactory, suffering-ridden situation that he was in. He kept on walking. And yes, there was the fourth encounter that he came to. And on this fourth encounter, that was where he saw a man with a begging bowl and orange robes. And he went up to him and he said, "Excuse me, sir, I've never seen anybody like you. You don't have any hair, you've got a shaven head, and you're wearing these strange orange robes. What are you doing?" And he said, "Oh, sir, I'm just out begging today. I'm a mendicant. I'm a monk." Prince Siddhartha said, "Well, what is that? What is a monk? What is this? What do you do? What kind of profession do you have?" The monk laughed and said, I don't have a profession, sir. This is what I do every day. I just go about. I go walking and I ask people for a little bit of food so that I have a bit of sustenance, and they're kind enough to give it to me." Well, where do you go after that?" asked Siddhartha. "Where do you go?" He said, "Well, after that, I go back to the forest." He said, "What do you mean you go back to the forest? Where's your home? Where's your family?" He said, "Oh, I've left all of that. I've completely left everybody, and now I just live in the forest and meditate." "Meditate? What do you mean? You just sit there and observe yourself?" "Yes, sir, that's all I do." "Why do you do this?" "Because I want to break free, sir. I want to know the truth of the reality of this world. And we don't find that by going out into the world. We find that by going within." And then he went on his way. Now, Siddhartha was completely blown away by all of these four encounters. It revolutionized his whole world, because not only did he get his predicament in the world, he heard about this radically new form of freedom that was possible. A freedom that was going to take him, the monk told him it was possible to become free from all of these sufferings. Now, that night when Siddhartha got back to the palace, it would just happen to be that on that same night, that's when his beautiful wife, Yasodhara, she'd just given birth. And he walked in the room and all of her attendants were looking after her because she was the princess. She had everybody attending her, making sure she had all the comforts of the whole world in this beautiful palace. And there was his little newborn baby son. And it all came crashing down on him, all at once. He realized that he was fully stuck in the system. There he was, entrapped. He was trapped in his body that was going to give out on him one day. It was going to decay and he was going to lose it. He was now bound to a family. There was a new, desperate little baby that needed help and sustenance. It was all happening again. He was part of a process that was going to keep him further entrapped. They were never going to let him go now. He could see it all happening ahead of him. Not only was he now the prince, not only now was he a father, but he had to become the king. So many responsibilities. He was going to become more and more trapped in the system of responsibilities, endlessly having to take care of everybody in the kingdom. And so the last act he took that night was he said, "Call my son Rahula." Rahula. It means fetter, a fetter in the way. He realized that's what his son was going to be, an obstacle in the way of his pursuit of freedom. And so he took his attendant in the middle of the night out of the palace on horseback and commanded him to ride with him to the edge of the forest. And when he got to the edge of the forest, he took out a knife, and he had long hair because that's how they had it back then, long, beautiful hair. He cut off his hair, and his attendant is crying and begging him, "No, please, sir, don't leave, don't leave." He says, "I have to. This is it for me. I'm gone. I'm going into the forest. I'm going to find out what's true, and I'm going to break free from all of the sufferings in the world, and I'm going to come back and share it with you, and share it with everybody, but not until I've completely liberated myself from all the obstacles of life." And he went off. And how long did it take Siddhartha from that point? 6 years. 6 years of living in the forest, of putting himself and subjecting himself to all forms of craziness. He just subjected himself to everything you could think of to break free. That's a whole other story. But long and the short of it is, he succeeded. On the full moon night, after pushing himself to the extremes that we can't even imagine. He became completely liberated, so the story goes, if we believe it, and he became the Buddha. Gautama the Buddha, no longer Prince Siddhartha, transformed himself. And yes, he did go back. He went back to society, and there's many parts of that which we can talk about in other episodes, of an interesting story there, and how he even taught all of his family and all the people in the villages and so forth. But I heard that story when I was 20. It blew me away when I heard the story, but I didn't really get it. I didn't really believe it, because I was part of a cult. Here's the craziest thing. The very cult that I was part of was even a Buddhist cult. They were telling us those stories, and yet at the same time telling me that it was a good idea to go and get married and have kids. Craziness. I didn't add it all up, because I was stupid back then. I was this guy in my early 20s. I didn't have enough data points all coming together to reveal the restrictive nature. You see, I was even believing that the Buddhist structure and the Goenka organization, that they were part of a liberation process. I didn't realize that they were further bondage. All such organizations, Buddhism, all these groups, even though they talk about freedom, now they've become an organization. They are just as restrictive. Their goal is to have you become further restricted. Don't kid yourself. All of them, even though you're going to find groups talking about how to become free and how to become liberated, financially, economically, socially, spiritually, whatever, when you really dig into it, a lot of the time, that they're actually going to be about you still being bound up inside the system. You're going to be bound to the machine. And these machines are very subtle, very clever at keeping you entrapped in a sticky web where you don't even notice. And maybe you're even kept very comfortable, just like Prince Siddhartha, comfortable in a palace. You see, that's how this human society, this human realm has been designed now. Not for everybody, because you have to have it aspirational. You have to have the people who are fortunate enough to have a lot of the goodies. You know, there they are with all their mod cons, all their gadgets and a nice home. And the aspirationals, the people that have nots, the people who look up to them and go, oh, please, I just want some of that. Yes, give me some of that. That'll make my life so much easier. And nobody realizing that they're all still trapped. They don't have the freedoms to do as they please. They can't do what they like. Even the people who have all the wealth and everything everybody's aspiring to, really dig into their lives, and you'll find that a lot of the time that they are still very trapped. They don't have the freedom. They don't have true freedom in their hearts, in their minds, and so, but at least they do have economic freedom, and that's far more freedom than what most people have. So freedom is in so many different areas. When you make freedom your true north, when it becomes the guiding principle of your life, then you will start to understand what it's going to take for you to be in this world, to have the world be on your terms, because otherwise the world will have you on its terms. Society, the human society, it will be making a plan for you. Because if you don't have a plan, then absolutely, society's got a plan for you, and it will keep you moving in the direction that society wants you to go in. And what does it want you to do? It wants you to have some debts, to be stuck to your job, to have a mortgage, to be bound, to be raising children, to be making new people, creating some new people for the economic structure to keep on going. All of this is being played out, and you are a piece in that. But when it all comes down to it, what are you really doing? Whose life is this? Who else really cares about how fulfilled, deeply fulfilled, and happy and joyous are you? Nobody even knows. It's only you. And only you can't even kid yourself. Authentically have a look. Are you really happy with this situation? And if you're one of those fortunate people that are, how about the other people around you? Because as long as other people are bound and restricted, there is something of that in you as well. As long as everybody is not free, how free are we really? But that's getting ahead of ourselves. That's a big job. Let's not get carried away. Bring it all back. Let's get real. Have a look at your own life. And if freedom is not your priority, I highly recommend that you start asking yourself why. What story have you been spun and told? What are you being told is the priority? Really, like, what is your priority in your life? My priority is freedom. That's it. That's it. Only freedom, without any bounds. No boundary, no limits, no compromise, non-stop freedom. And since 2013, that's what I've been having. That's what I've been building. Every year, the level of freedom keeps on expanding, and it gets wilder, crazier, more unimaginable. My deepest aspirations that I had as a child of believing in the magic and believing in UFOs and believing in other dimensions and all this stuff that I just saw in movies and things as a little kid, all that's become real for me. It's all 100% real and my living daily reality. I know where to go to see these things, where to be in the world. It's blown me away just how magical the world is, how much freedom there is possible here, that this realm that we're living in is nothing like what we think. There is no limits here, except for the limits that the diabolical situation is placing over everybody. The creation of a system that makes people believe in money, makes them believe in time, makes them believe in goals of productivity and having to fulfill obligations, makes them believe that they have to make new people to make the system keep on going. Restrictions makes them believe that you have to have toxicity and pollution. All this crazy stuff makes everybody believe that that's real. There isn't any reality to that. The world doesn't have to be like that. It is real. It's really being played out. But that's only one vision of reality. It's the reality that the demons want to have here. The diabolical structure that wants to be played out, that wants to control and consume the world and eat it up. Well, I'm not aligned to that. No way. I'm here for freedom. I'm here for freedom for me, and I'm here for freedom for you. What are you here for?